South Korea's presidential office convened an emergency meeting of the National Security Council within hours of the missile launch, and President Moon and U.S. President Trump held a conference call to discuss North Korea's latest provocation. Our chief Blue House correspondent Moon Connyoung now joins us live. Connyoung, give us the details.
Right, Town. So the message is very clear. It's a serious threat to the international community, and South Korea will not just sit back and watch North Korea launch these provocations. That's a message that was delivered by South Korean President Moon Jae-in during the emergency meeting of the National Security Council early this morning, within hours of North Korea's missile launch. So take a listen first.
북한이 핵과 미사일을 포기할 때까지 한미 양국을 비롯한 국제사회는 강력한 제재와 압박을 추진해 갈 수밖에 없습니다.
Now, Town, the latest missile test by North Korea, as mentioned by our Oh Jung-hee earlier at the top of the broadcast, is the first in 75 days and the 11th of its kind since President Moon Jae-in took office in May, so in a bit over 6 months. So on average, that would be nearly 2 per month. Now, what's different about this time is that contrary to previous missile launches, South Korea, and we're learning that the U.S. and Japan as well, were not caught off guard. In fact, multiple sources here in the Blue House tell me that South Korean President Moon Jae-in, during a late afternoon tea time with the chief aides yesterday, asked for ways to give the South Korean public a heads up before today's missile launch so as to reduce the level of alarm amongst the public. And the measure taken was the National Defense Ministry's announcement yesterday of an imminent provocation by North Korea today, which of course Arirang News reported. Not only that, a senior Blue House official tells me that it was as early as Monday, so today's Wednesday, so as early as Monday that South Korean president delegated full authority to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff here to stage a precision strike missile exercise that we saw immediately after North Korea's missile launch, to stage that immediately afterwards. So that was as early as Monday that South Korean President Moon Jae-in gave that power to the chairman of JCS. Town.
Well, Connyoung, tensions are certainly unprecedentedly reaching high. Now, what happens now? We all know that President Moon has been taking a somewhat softer stance compared to U.S. President Donald Trump. Could he perhaps take the path now that is perhaps not so diplomatic?
Well, hopefully not, and no. The short answer is no, Town, at this point at least. But first, I want you to listen to these remarks from South Korean president.
압도적인 힘의 우위를 기반으로 북한의 핵미사일 위협으로부터 대한민국을 보호하고 무력 도발 시 적극 응징하여 위협을 제거할 수 있는 역량을 더 한층 강화해 나갈 것입니다.
So to sum that up, he's made very clear that any kind of armed provocation by North Korea will be met with even stronger retaliation by South Korea based on what the South Korean president has repeatedly called for time and time again, based on an absolute dominance of military might, military strength over North Korea, and that's what he called for. He also delivered a clear warning to North Korea that North Korea should in no way miscalculate the situation and threaten the South Korea with nuclear or missile weapons, leading the U.S. to even consider the possibility of a preemptive strike against North Korea. He did reassure that he and U.S. President Donald Trump are working together to manage the situation carefully so that such military conflict does not break out on the Korean peninsula. And perhaps as part of efforts to do just that, South Korean President Moon Jae-in held a crisis call with U.S. President Donald Trump immediately after the conclusion of the National Security Council meeting earlier today, where the two leaders strongly condemned the rogue state for its latest missile provocations, defying all international sanctions, of course. And but what's also noteworthy is that the two leaders decided to further discuss ways to deal with North Korea after a thorough examination and assessment of the level of technological advancement of the latest missile launched by North Korea. So could this Could this make a difference in the way South Korea and the U.S. deal with North Korea, perhaps depending on the level of sophistication of North Korea's latest missile? That we'll have to look out for in the next couple of days. Taeun?